you and has design for you and has provision for you and has ministry for you, has all the things that you feel in your spirit. But can I tell you today, can I preach for just a second, not at you, but with you? Can I look in a mirror with you today? Can I look at the future today of this church and go, we'll never possess the promises of God if we're not a forgiving church, first and foremost. If we can't take offense and choose to go, we forgive you and we still love you and we're still going to serve you and we're still going to care, we'll never taste and see of the miraculous that we all know we can see and taste. Is it reasonable? It doesn't seem right that a victim would have to struggle for years to get victory over something they didn't cause or deserve. Forgiveness seems unfair. Our objection rise from a basic misunderstanding of forgiveness. Let me talk about this for just a second, and then we'll go back. Forgiveness is not about denying your pain. Somebody hear me in the room. Forgiveness is not about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. No, that's toxic. It's not about suppressing the pain down in a corner of your life and acting like, no, we're good, man. No, we're good. That doesn't mean you're forgiving anything. Right? It's not about letting your offender off the hook. It's not what forgiveness is about. It's not about blaming you, the victim. You're not to blame. That's not forgiveness. And most importantly, I just want to say this. Forgiveness is not unfair. The enemy is in your mind and in your house telling you that it is unfair if I forgive. Can I just say this way? Our God does nothing that is unfair. So if God is the God of forgiveness, you understand where forgiveness comes from, and you have to understand His nature. And there is nothing unfair about our nature. He is a God of provision. He's a God of grace, and He's a God of favor. Can I remind you of that today? I want to get the lie of the enemy out of your brain to go that forgiveness is so unfair. No, it's not, because it comes from God, and our God is not an unfair God. The Greek word translated forgive carries the idea of a release from some type of obligation, most commonly a financial obligation. That's how Jesus most often illustrates the concept of forgiveness. In Luke, it's in chapter 7, then Jesus told this story. A man loaned money to two people, 500 pieces of silver to one and 50 pieces of silver to the other. But neither of them could repay him. So he kindly forgave both of them, canceling their debts. Who do you suppose loved him more after that? The moneylender chose to release both of these debtors from their very real obligation. The money owed was not a figment of his imagination. He had a legal right to be paid. He was the innocent party. The borrowers had a legal obligation to pay. There was a deficit between their debt. There was a deficit between their resources to be able to pay. The rule of accounting says, Tracy, that the books had to be balanced. There's an insufficient funds. Anybody ever got that from the ATM? Dear God. We need some forgiveness. The greatest misunderstanding about forgiveness is that it's simply overlooking someone else's transgression. The truth of the matter is that someone always has to pay. Because an offense always creates an obligation that must be satisfied. The essence of forgiveness is this. When we forgive, we acknowledge that a wrong has occurred. We recognize that there is an obligation for repayment. And let me tell you what forgiveness is today. We choose to release our offender from that obligation and to cover the loss ourselves. We all call ourselves Christian. Fair? What is that? Well, that's to be Christ-like. Fair? What does that mean? It means we pay debts off. Anybody ever know what it is at Christmas time to walk into a home and you know they don't have a penny to buy gifts? You know that this is supposed to be a joyous occasion. This is supposed to be something amazing and a wonderful season for a lot of maybe little kiddos, that it is just, it's euphoric, right? But you know there's a debt in that house, that there's insufficient funds. And so what does something in you rise up to say? That I'm going to make up the difference. I'm going to step in the scene and I'm going to pay this, or I'm going to pay this debt off, or I'm going to provide something that otherwise they could never do on their own. Right. Can I tell you, that's actually forgiveness. You step into a situation and you know there's an issue here. There's an obligation here that's not being met, right? It's an unfair one, but it's there, right? And so you walk in there and you recognize that there's something that needs to happen here. And then we choose as an individual, as a Spirit-filled, Spirit-led person, to walk into the situation and not only say, listen, we understand there was some issues, but I just want you to know you're forgiven. Not only are you forgiven, but I just want you to also know that I've prayed on your behalf, and I've prayed for the grace of God and the mercy of God to begin to step in and correct and begin to remove some things to allow this true form of unforgiveness. Amen. Most of us have no trouble with the first two because we are expert record keepers. We can acknowledge there was a wrong, and we can recognize that there's a repayment plan that needs to go into effect, but we have no idea how. The person that hurt you, somebody hear me in this room, the person that hurt you, I can literally pass the mic and you can tell me exactly how it happened, when it happened, and you can tell me your expectation of repayment. And you know the truth of the matter? You know the hangman's noose that unforgiveness is that you can list all those obligations out, and let me just tell you, they're never going to repay it. Let me just tell you this, they're not capable of repaying it. So that's the frustration of unforgiveness, that you as the victim, because someone's not paying back what they stole, what they took, that someone can't even pay back what they stole and what they took. So if you dwell there, you are held hostage by their inability to repay, and honey, they're never repaying it. You ever wonder that's why when it says that Jesus paid it all, and all to Him I owe? Why is that so powerful? It's because when Christians become Christ-like, they step into situations of unforgiveness and they're dead right in their hurt. They're dead right in their brokenness. You know why? Because Jesus was. He didn't deserve what He got. He didn't deserve those lashes. He didn't deserve that cross. He didn't deserve the nails in His hands. That wasn't His. He did nothing to do that. But because someone somewhere abused Him, because someone somewhere took advantage of Him, because such were some of us that hurt Him. But yet He chose to forgive as the victim. As the ultimate victim, as the ultimate sacrifice. He didn't look at you and go, I can't forgive you because you're going to do it again. Nope. He didn't look at me and say that, Christian. He didn't look at me and say, I'm not going to forgive you on Sunday because Monday you're going to go right back to it. He didn't say that to me. Thank you, Jesus. And not only did He forgive, and He knew there was an obligation that couldn't be met, and He knew that we couldn't repay it on our own, right? That's why He came as the perfect Lamb, because He knew none of us could be good enough to fulfill the debt. So He said, not only am I going to clean the debt, but I'm going to pay the price. And that's the definition of forgiveness. And the reason I go a little deeper, and the reason I'm talking about this today, is because I think some of us can get in situations where, because of time, it doesn't sting as much. It doesn't hurt as much. And we will play lip service to the fact that, we've forgiven them. But until you've wiped the debt from their account, you haven't forgiven them. And I'm not stepping on toes. I'm not calling people out today. I'm telling you that this is the difference between here and now and your future. This is the difference in living a life held hostage to bitterness and anger and remorse and depression and anxiety and it causing your current marriage issues. This is the difference that's going to tear the relationship with your kids to shreds. This is the difference that's literally going to choke out life that should be in your life. But because you're playing lip service to forgiveness, you'll never taste and see of the future that God really wants you to have. I'm going to go back to Peter for a second. Matthew 18. Peter came in and said, Lord, how often can my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? And Jesus said to him, I did not say to you up to 7 times. Once again, imagination station, put your thinking caps on. We're going back to this situation. Standing there, we see Peter hardened, hurt. Jesus, he's his friend. Jesus is close to Peter. This is the man that Jesus gives the keys to the kingdom to. This is a man that Jesus is soon to die for. And he goes, Jesus, I know you see me. I know you see my hurt. You know probably who I'm referencing. Because Peter says, how many times can who? My brother. Someone close to me. That's how I know Peter's talking about a deep hurt. He didn't say an acquaintance. He didn't say a distant person, a first-time guest. He said a brother. How many times can someone close to me whom I've trusted and really whom I've loved, how many times can that person hurt me? Is it 7 times, Lord? Is it 7 times that my dad, my mom can come into my life and blow things up? Is it just 7 times, God, that I can be on a really good path and then all of a sudden somebody step in and somebody that I love and I trust says something and it wrecks me once again? Is it just 7, God? Jesus responds here and says, don't put words in my mouth. I didn't tell you 7 times. Whoa, 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 Peter, check your logic at the door. You have authority and power, but you've got to understand, when it comes to this forgiveness thing, I'm the example. I am the parameter. It's not what you tell me I'm going to do. It's what I'm going to tell you you're going to do. His authority shows up. This is how strongly Christ felt about forgiveness. He corrected him. He said, don't put words in my mouth. But I'm going to correct you here and say, actually, it's 70 times 7. Now, perhaps understand this. Come to this moment with me, right? Is that, y'all, they didn't have an iPhone calculator. Right? Fair? They didn't have that. They didn't have an app on their phone that could go, carry the 4, carry the 9. And listen, I'm a fisherman. They're predominantly not the best mathematicians. Right? Because everything they catch is a 10-pounder. Everything they catch is an 8-pounder. They don't know. They're not in numbers, okay? They're fishermen. Right? How many fish you got in the box? I don't know. A lot. Right? That right, Lane? We catch them. We stop counting at a certain point because we don't really want to know the number. Because if asked, therefore, we can say, we're not sure. We think it's the limit. I don't know. Right? They're fishermen. But I think it was Matthew, right, that was kind of involved in some taxes. He was probably maybe more of the accountant. Right? That when Jesus says 70 times 7, did he pause? Did he stop? And he gave them a math equation to where their little minds are going, what does that mean? What does that mean? How many times is that? Anybody know that answer? Right? It's like being in a group project and you're like, dear Lord, I hope somebody knows this answer because I don't know it. Right? And then Matthew, I got to think, it's like, says the number. And then they're all like, running again. That seems really high. Did he get that wrong? That's a lot of times. Right? And he paused a little bit because he wanted to make sure that the weight of that number, and then in verse 23, then Jesus says, therefore the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun to settle accounts, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. But as he was not able to pay, his master commanded that he be sold with his wife and his children and all that he had, and that the payment be made. 26 says, then the servant fell down before them, saying, Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you all. Then the master of the servant was moved with compassion, with love, and released him and forgave the debt. Although the servant absolutely had no way to make even the smallest dent in such a huge debt, he begs for just a little more time to try. What a pitiful sight to see him groveling before the king, and what a beautiful thing for this king in all of his power and authority, because he felt compassion for the man. The servant owed a very real debt to the king. The king had every right to expect repayment, but the king voluntarily released the servant from his obligation and covered the loss himself. Forgiveness is the only way to settle the debt. It's the only way on your Excel sheet in your life. Can I say it this way? It's the only way. Anybody that's ever had a lump sum of money at any point in time, and I don't care if it's $500 or $5 million, because it's all proportional. Anybody ever just like log in and check their bank account to make sure it's still there? Can we be real? Right? You're like, I'm just double checking the bank. My $50 better be there. That's where your pastor's at, right? But they take out 25 cents for it. It's ridiculous. I'm keeping account of something because it's valuable to me. Can I tell you that the only way you truly understand that you've forgiven someone is that when you can begin to think on your life, and you can begin to pull up the balance sheet of your life and go, what amazing things God has done. Or some of us, unfortunately, we can go, what a season this has been. And you begin to look and mark and look at these things, right? The only way you know you truly have tasted and seen and offered forgiveness is that when you can go to your balance sheet of your life and truly look at it and go, we're good. We're good. They owe me nothing. It's not this awkwardness that Christian owes me $20 and I can't be in a room with him because he knows how bad I needed the $20, but he just hasn't given it to me. And then what happens when that's how you think about it? Before you know it, it's awkward. And I'm like, hey, man. Hey, how you doing? I'm good. Yeah. Cool, man. That's a really good-looking new pair of shoes you got. Right? Come on, man. I ain't forgiving him. But when I can come in and run in and hug his neck and go, bro, you doing good? Yeah, man. Me too. I'm going to be real for a second. It's when you can look across and see an ex-spouse that blew your life up and you can go, I wish them nothing but the best. I don't have to go on vacation with them anymore. That's fair. That's part of forgiveness. But I also have no anxiety. I have no angst. I have no issues. Why? Because Jesus paid my debt, so who am I to not pay his or hers? Jesus paid it all for me, so who am I to still hold that to their account? Listen, we ain't got to be married again. We know that ship has sailed. That's fair. But please understand, I'm not holding you accountable for what God has forgiven me of. Can we be real for a second? What alternative to forgiveness did the king really have? Would the slave's imprisonment have resulted in even one more dollar returning to the king? I don't know. Ask Nazi Germany. Look at the Holocaust situation. That's what they did. They took unforgiveness for a group of people, and those people could never pay what Nazi Germany demanded from the Jewish people. They could never amount to enough. That's why they called them less than human. And then before you know it, this idea of unforgiveness led to these atrocities from people that look around and go, how did we get here? Because they couldn't pay a debt, then we think it's okay to send them to a concentration camp. We think it's okay to just starve them out, let them rot, because that's what they deserve. Yeah, you're being a Nazi. And I'm not being political today. I'm telling you, that's how atrocious unforgiveness gets people. That's what you turn into if the king looks at it and goes, I'm selling your family, I'm selling your kids, and you're enslaved to me because you took what you can't pay back. And that's just the right decision. I don't think anybody in here wants to be that bad. Realistically, the king didn't have any other option because he wanted to be a good king. He had a desire to be righteous and upright. He had a desire to go, I want my kingdom to succeed. I want my kingdom to flourish. I want my kingdom to be thought well of. I want my house to be what my house needs to be. And even though there's a debt here that I'm owed, I know that I'm supposed to move in compassion towards someone. Why? Because I know it will be repaid to me from my heavenly Father. I know that my provision comes from someone far greater than any person that could hurt me, far greater than any relationship that I could have here. What satisfactory payment could someone ever give to you to compensate for a child killed by a drunk driver? Can I be real for a second? Heaven forbid if some of you have experienced that, but what's an accurate payment? What's an accurate payment for a reputation that's been slandered by false rumors? What's a repayment? What is the amount for a marriage destroyed by infidelity? Does anybody have a dollar amount? No, because you can't. You can't. They can't repay it, and you don't even know what they need to repay. You're just stuck in a rut going, I'm owed something. No. Forgive and watch how you're blessed. Forgive and watch how God allows you to move on. Forgive even when you feel like you can't, but you know you have to. And watch what God will provide you. Watch how He'll send someone in your life to love you unlike you've ever been loved. Watch how He'll give you a church family that lifts you up to a place of position in ministry to then begin to share a testimony that when you talk about a mom that abandoned you, that you can talk to young people and you can see their life change. Because why? Because the hurt that you forgave somebody of. Watch what happens in a divorce situation when you give your life to God and He calls you to Branson to start a church, and you get to see people's testimonies begin to change and begin to change the world around them. That's what God does when you forgive. He empowers you to give more than you ever had. He empowers you to have more than you could ever make. Forgiveness is going to free you to get on with your life. Right? I'm going to land this plane today. Hebrews tells us, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily hinders our progress. And let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. You're meant to move on. Can I tell somebody this morning? Can I allow them? Can you hear it from a pulpit this morning? You're meant to move on. You're not meant to stay in this season of your life. You're not meant to harbor hate. You're not meant to be stuck in this rut of unforgiveness. It's not your purpose. It's not the plan of God for your life. I'm sorry it happened. You are righteously understood as a victim. It's not fair. It's not your fault. But you're not supposed to be stuck here. You're not supposed to be stuck here. You follow that story. King forgave the man. And for some reason, the man that was forgiven forgot about his unforgiveness. Right? I think some of you probably know this story. So in Matthew, it continues to say, it says, but then when the man left the king, he went to a fellow servant who owed him a few $1,000s because he's like, I got a debt I got to pay off, so now I got to be immoral. I got to go be the angry monster that the king wasn't to me, so then I can fulfill a debt. I got to rob Peter to pay Paul. When you harbor unforgiveness, you become this man. My ex-husband, he was so terrible to me. And when I harbor that unforgiveness, before I know it, I begin to poison my kids. I look at them and I demand they repay me for the debt that he should be paying. You hear me today? I don't think it's your intention. You're just trying to find a way to pay a debt that's messed your life up. And so what do? You go to people around you, and before you know it, that unforgiveness begins to offload, and you begin to be the very person that hurt you to other people. This guy goes to his other servant, and this fellow servant fell down before him and begged him for a little more time. Please be patient. I'll pay it, he pleaded. But his creditor wouldn't wait. He had the man arrested and jailed until the debt could be paid in full. When some of the other servants saw this, they were upset. They went to the king and told him what had happened. And the king called in the man he had forgiven and said, "You evil servant, I forgave you that tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. I heard your cries and I knew you couldn't pay it, so I showed mercy on you. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had mercy on you?" Then the angry king sent the man to prison until he had paid every penny. He ruined his life. He took his life from him. Now think about this zinger that is left in our word. Matthew 18 and 35. Jesus says, "That's what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and your sisters in your heart." With every offense comes a choice. Someone hear me today. "Pastor, how can I be saved?" You got to forgive. Someone hear me today. You got to forgive. You got to pay the debt. You just got to let it go. I know I don't know all the details. I know it's hairy. I know it's ugly. I know it's immoral. I know it's absolutely the definition of sin that happened to you. But I want you to make heaven. I want you to get to the other side of this thing and flourish. I want to see your babies do well. I want to see your grandkids flourish. I want to see your life be touched and have the favor and the provision of God on it. I want to see you taste and see of the provision that God has for you. But the only way you get there is not by having the right pastor. It's not by finding a new marriage. It's not by having a mom conversation every now and then. No, it's by finding an altar and forgiving. Let's all stand in this place today. Some of you are probably visual learners. Some of you maybe are more kinesthetic where you got to touch things. I'm going to say it this way, and I could have said this one paragraph and we just went home. Each one of us in this room, it's the unity that allows us to be here together. It's why it's so important that we come together and hug each other's necks. It's why it's so important that, John, I shake your hand and I look at you and tell you, man, I believe in you. Each one of us will have situations arise in our life where we are much more concerned about someone's obligation to us than they are. Anybody ever had somebody say something to you and it just offended you to the core? And you feel like they just went on with their day? Like, it's like, how offensive. You just absolutely train wrecked my day. You made every task that I'm going to try to do the rest of the day 7 times harder because of this dumb comment that you insensitively said to me. But here's the truth, y'all, is that if we hold on to the offense, we in effect become an emotional hostage to our offender. When you hold on to the debt that that person should repay to you, they're not going to repay it. So what you do is, by inherently, you continue to be victimized by the victimizer. Can I say it that way? By not forgiving said person, you still give them leverage in your life to not be able to move on. The very person that if someone said tomorrow, this person dictates your every move, it would strike fear in your heart. You would have an emotional breakdown. That very person, the longer you choose to unforgive them, the very thing that you hate to happen, you're allowing them to have. One of the best reasons to forgive someone is not what it does for them, but what it does for you. Can I say this? This is what I love about situations where I see people overcome things, is that they make a purposeful, intentional choice to be better. They finally take back control that really the victim stole from them. Because if you look at any situation that's terrible and grotesque and awful, really a lot of times what happens is that the victimizer, the predator, steals the control and the choice away from the victim. Put any in that box, but a lot of times that's the sad, is their choice stole your ability to choose. Fair? And so when you begin to forgive, it literally is the wholesome moment that you finally are taking back your ability to choose. You're finally taking back your ability to say, I'm going to be different. The picture that I could have painted for you is simply this. Remember, it's not about them, it's about you. I hate snakes. Can I just say that? I don't really care for a snake. I know God created them for a reason. They help the ecosystem, all those things. But I don't really want a snake around me. Or a spider. I'm holding a rattlesnake in my hands. Never is going to happen. Never say never, but dear God, please never let that happen. Let that be a prayer. Can I tell you, letting go of the rattlesnake, if it's in my hands, I'm going to be trying to kill it, right? So letting go of this rattlesnake, it probably might help the snake have a better chance to live because I'm trying to kill it if it's my hands are on it, right? But can I tell you, letting go of the snake really benefits me. Somebody hear me today? Letting go of it benefits you. It's for your good. It's for your future. It's for your kids. It's for their kids. It's for your grandkids. It's for the future generations. It's for this church. It's for your friends. It's for your ministry. It's for your life. The fact of the matter is that forgiveness is the obligation of the forgiven. You heard it here. Be reminded here. Forgiveness is the obligation of the forgiven. Every head bowed, every eye closed. I know it's heavy. I know you're hurting. I know you're stuck. I know you're in pieces. But I would today, if we can take just a couple minutes here, to get off our soapbox as to why we're the victim, to understand that until we forgive, we're not going to get anywhere. Till I forgive that parent that absolutely has done nothing but ruin my life. I hold those debts on his or her account. Can I tell you today that you're not going to move anywhere? You're not going to be better. You're not going to heal. You're not going to be able to taste and see of the provision that God has for you that you've prayed and fasted about even. Can I tell somebody in this room that their marriage is in shambles because of abuse or because of immorality? Can I tell you today that you're never going to see and taste of better things until you find an altar and just say, God, I just want to forgive. I'm so tired of the bitterness. I'm so tired of the anger. It isn't even about the other person as much as it is just, Lord, heal me, make me whole. Put me in a position, Lord, so that I understand that they owe me nothing because you've taken my sins away.